All right, everybody, how y'all doing out there? Welcome to another episode of Politics for the People. My name is Daniel Jackson, and I am your candidate for Georgia's 12th Congressional District here in Eastern Georgia. All right, I have a few guests today that I'm going to bring in. We're going to be talking about reproductive rights. My first guest is going to be Heather White. Heather, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your candidacy.
Well, I'm running in District 131 for state legislature, and I am hoping to move the needle a little in efforts to get people more aware of what's going on in our state legislation. I am a retired military officer. I served 20 years in the Army, and I have 4 little kids, and they're the reason why I decided to run. I have not a lot of interesting things to share because I'm pretty, live that home life now, being retired. But that's about it.
All right. Well, hey, welcome, Heather. Thank you for being here on tonight's show. We also have Dr. Maples. Dr. Maples, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Annamaria, Dr. Maples. I am from Missouri originally. I did my medical school in Missouri and then moved to Florida to do my OBGYN residency training. And then after residency, I came up to Atlanta, where I am a general OBGYN, but I'm also in a fellowship program where I subspecialize in abortion and contraception care for medically complex individuals, as well as research and advocacy in abortion and contraception care. And my dog is also in the background too.
I see. No, that's the beauty of having live, is having the dogs and everyone walking through the house behind you. No, that's awesome. But thank you for being here today, Dr. Maples.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this particular conversation, it's a timely conversation because there's been a lot going on in the news, right? You just recently had Florida. They just had a lot of things that happened within their state when it comes to abortion, but also Arizona. Arizona Supreme Court recently upheld an 1864 law banning abortion. So it's a lot going on at the state level, but this all stems from the Roe v. Wade situation that, Roe v. Wade being overturned about 2 years ago. So what are y'all seeing out here across Georgia, Heather and Dr. Maples? How are y'all feeling about that right now?
Well, I feel like every time I speak to someone, they're kind of not really paying attention to what's going on. Like they're not aware of the ramifications that can happen when we limit abortion care. And I feel like I'm in this constant state of trying to educate people. And I'm very excited to be talking to Dr. Maples to learn a little more about her firsthand experience.
Okay, Dr. Maples, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, this has been my everyday for a long time, but it's usually not, everybody else's everyday until they're in the situation where they need abortion care or somebody they love needs abortion care. And so every time I have the opportunity to talk about how this can affect people and how it can impact them and their loved ones, I try and take that opportunity to educate in the best way that I can.
Right. Okay. So yeah, let's jump into that education part of it because that's what I'm all about as well, right? So I just touched on it a little bit, right? Since Roe v. Wade, that was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, that allowed a lot of state laws and legislation to kick in. And so now you're kind of seeing people, well, not people, but the states, the legislation within the states, they're kind of making their stance on abortion, right? So now we have about 15 to 16 states, depending upon, how things go in Florida and Arizona. Those particular states make about 15, 16 states that are now banning abortion, right? So you still have 35 to 34 states that, are still legalizing abortion, but those laws that they're trying to put in place in certain states are trying to hold people accountable that leave, our states like Alabama, Mississippi, especially a lot of southern states. They're trying to put certain legislation in place where it's going to attack medical professionals who are in these legal states for delivering abortions to people who choose to leave, right? So, or leave states where abortion has been banned or to some point illegal. So I want you guys to kind of weigh in on that whole thing, because I feel as if the federal level, we have to have protections at that level to protect people within certain states, only for the fact that at the state level, you kind of already have people weighing in and digging in the ground of how they're going to treat abortion. So I don't see it getting better with time, but only for the simple fact that these state legislatures are dominated by one party. So you guys want to weigh in on that?
Heather, do you want to say anything?
No, you can talk.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. It's hard to function in a system with restrictions on people's ability to access the healthcare that they need. It's very hard for patients who don't have to typically navigate systems that are this challenging, and it's very hard as a provider to honestly feel good about the care that we're able to give to these patients. And so it's even more challenging when we have patients who are traveling to come get healthcare and trying to, talk with them about their safety and what they can and cannot do in their own state and what they can and cannot do in our state, and what kind of backup plans they have if things do go wrong when they get back home. And then it's hard to think about, what continuing to provide abortion care means for us and our families and our communities here in states where these bans are in place. Yeah, it's super challenging. It's super hard. And the more I think that we can talk about it and talk about situations that come up, whether they're, extreme situations or just regular everyday people who need to make decisions about their health care, the more we can talk about it, the hopefully easier it's going to get for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heather, you being a candidate out here, and I feel remiss because I didn't allow you to kind of tell everybody about where you're running, right? You're running out here in Evans, Georgia, correct?
Yes, most of the constituents are in Evans, Georgia, and we have about maybe a quarter of them in Grovetown.
In Grovetown. Okay, so Evans, Georgia, Grovetown. So that's Columbia County for those that are watching. So being out here in rural Georgia, as we call it, there's a huge difference in what the city, as we call it, Atlanta, the Savannahs of the world, are able to do from a resource standpoint when it comes to abortion resources and actually services that they deliver to the public. And then out here where we're at, you want to weigh in on that? Kind of talk about how you would like to see Georgia moving in, moving forward?
Yes. Well, I think that we need to have more incentives to get more OBGYNs, because I think Georgia is already, we have a lot of areas that lack proper care already. And I think we are not going to improve our mortality rate if we don't have proper care and systems in place, because I know Georgia is has one of the highest mortality rates in the U.S. And I know that there's been a drop in OBGYN interest in coming to the state as the laws have changed.
Okay, Dr. Maples. So you've been in this field for a while now, right? And so you've seen a number of things change over time. What can you tell us about the way you've seen patient care? How's that progressed since the days before Roe v. Wade was overturned to now? Like, what are you seeing from a general patient care standpoint?
I will say that what Heather has touched on is exactly accurate. There have been a lot of studies that have come out recently that say that graduates of medical schools and people who are going into OBGYN training, they are hesitant to go train in states that have abortion restrictions, just because usually, for a multitude of reasons, but sometimes because, you know, these people are building families of their own. These people need to ensure that they can get all the care that they need, and they want to be able to practice the full scope of reproductive health care. So yes, Heather, 100%, you are touching on something that's crazy important right now. And it's happening all across the South and Midwest, where all of these bans are going into effect. I will say the people in the South who are dedicated to providing comprehensive reproductive health care, abortion especially, are fully committed to providing that care. There are systems in place across the South, networks in place across the South of people who are so dedicated and compassionate to provide this care, and I can't see a situation where those people would leave. But as someone who moved here days after Roe v. Wade fell, I will say it has been very interesting to see these communities of people come together and band together to ensure that we are able to continue to provide abortion care within the confines of these bans that we have in place. It's been very inspiring to see people work together. It's been very sad and scary and frustrating as well, just because we know that we can do so much more. We are trained to do so much more, and abortion care is safe long after our politicians have decided that we can provide it. But there is a strong network of people here in the South who are dedicated. So I don't want to make it seem like these are, you know, people are abandoning the South or anything like that, because it may feel like that, but there are broad networks in place of people who are committed.
Right. No, and I'm glad you said that, because once again, this is for the educational purposes of the viewers, right? And a lot of the times you read CNN, you read Fox News, right? You read all these different websites, and you can you can pretty much draw a picture in your head about what you think is happening within a state or all these other states, right? But hearing it from people who are on the ground saying, hey, no, it's not totally true. I mean, yes, there is a restriction to access, but you know, we're committed to it here. Like, trying to educate our viewers on what's really going on the ground. Like, and so for me, as I read about the limited amount of access in the rural areas was a big issue, right? The number of providers, right? A lot of providers, they said that they, even though you have, you know, a team here, like you said, that is ready and willing, but that a lot of providers left Georgia, right? They wanted to leave Georgia and other states like it due to those restrictions. So I don't know how, you know, that is going to impact the women's health. And I think that's, for me, is where I want to hear from the subject matter experts, right? Because if you read these articles online, it talks about how that can have lasting impacts on a person's health, right? And so once we start talking about that is when, you know, I'm interested, and I'm just like, okay, let's really figure out some solutions to it, right? If you can't just have some of these bans that I'm seeing across the nation that have no exceptions to rape or incest, right? You can't just have those and then just have those issues where they could arise, where you see those individuals that walk into your clinic or they walk into clinics of your colleagues, and then you have no solutions, right? You didn't bake that into the legislation. So I'm really concerned about the legislation that's in place in every state, and to make sure that it accounts for the different you know, issues that females could encounter while they're going through or once they actually become pregnant. Because I have three older sisters. They all had teenage pregnancies, right? So yeah, they all, you know, carried them to full term, and they had, you know, kids and all that, right? It's great, but every female is not going to have that opportunity, right? Some females have real issues that we need to ensure that the legislation is not blocking that person from actually getting the care that they need. So Heather, you want to kind of weigh in on how you're seeing things, some of the questions that you wanted to ask Dr. Maples regarding local health?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things I run into a lot is this scenario where people think, oh, it won't happen to me. And I was just curious if you could maybe share some scenarios that you've seen about patients who, are in special situations or circumstances that may have led them to get an abortion that they didn't want to have or they didn't know they would need?
Yeah, the sentiment about, not thinking that this would ever happen to me, not thinking that I would ever have to make an abortion decision is so common. But the reality is that 1 in 4 people who can become pregnant will have an abortion by the age of 45. It's a very, very common decision that people make for one reason or another. Most of the time, these abortions are before 8 weeks of gestation. So that's 8 weeks from the first day of someone's last period. That's how we measure pregnancies. Sometimes abortions are after that, but the grand majority, 80% of abortions are before 8 weeks. And so if anyone listening has ever menstruated before, it is hard for some people to know that they have missed a period within days of when it's supposed to start, or sometimes with even a month later, it's still hard to kind of know when you're supposed to have a period. And so putting bans on abortion at all, I'll just start there, putting bans on abortion at all creates barriers for people who need to make these decisions for themselves, for their families. And then when you put arbitrary gestational age limit restrictions in these bans, it just makes that barrier even worse, because lots and lots of people do not know that they are pregnant at these early gestational ages. So in Georgia, we have a heartbeat ban, or a fetal cardiac activity ban, which means we can't legally perform abortion if it does not meet an exception after there is fetal cardiac activity detected. This usually happens around 6 weeks, but it can be before 6 weeks and it can be a little bit after 6 weeks. But that's still very, very early in a pregnancy. So what that looks like in practice is that if somebody has regular, predictable periods, getting into a appointment to have an abortion before 6 weeks means they at most have 2 weeks to put everything into place to get into that appointment, because most people's cycles are 4 weeks long.
Wow. No, that was very educational for me. I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I need to know these things as a father. uh, but no, what's crazy is here in the 12th congressional district, we have a lot of underserved communities, and the first thing that I think about is a lot of the knowledge that you're dropping right now, Dr. Maples. I wonder if we're actually teaching our young females this information, right? Because you place these limitations, these bans on reproductive rights in these different states, right? And I always complain about this and a lot of other things, but this in particular, if you place these bans and these limitations on reproductive rights, isn't it on the state or whatever body that is restricting those rights to kind of educate the masses, especially the females, on what is allowed and what's not allowed? And I don't know if we do that in the school systems, because once again, I tell you, we have a lot of unserved communities, and lack of education is rampant throughout, right? Not just within, not just within the school system on school things, but just on life things like this. So that's where I go back to some of the statistics that I read earlier and share with you all about Black women being 3 times as likely, Hispanic women being twice as likely to seek abortions, and that the disparity exists really once you look at the fact that a lot of those females are under the poverty line, right? So all that, taking all that into account, I'm really concerned about the females that are impacted by the lack of knowledge, right? So I'm going to kick this back to you guys, because I want to learn more actually on this podcast. So, but I want to talk towards that just a little bit. What are you seeing, Dr. Maples?
Well, I mean, I hear you, Daniel. You would think that if somebody's going to make rules that impact other people, they would want those people to have all the tools and knowledge necessary to be able to follow those rules. But these rules that the legislators and politicians make are not made because they are trying to look out for people. These are rules made because politicians want to be able to control other people's bodies for one reason or another, specifically minority bodies, specifically bodies that live under the poverty line or near the poverty line, persons of color, all these people. It's just about control. So when these laws are made, when these laws are passed, it is not because these legislatures are pro-life or anti whatever. They simply just want to control people's lives, and they don't care. They don't care if their constituents or if the people that they're making these laws for can actually follow them or not. They just want the clout for being able to say, that they passed such and such. So Georgia has an abstinence-only sex education policy in its public schools, which means we get taught in Georgia public schools that the only way to be safe and prevent pregnancy is abstinence, which is medically, inaccurate. There are many ways to stay safe. We don't have great discussions or maybe any discussions about consent in relationships in Georgia public schools, or comprehensive knowledge about, reproductive physiology, how bodies work, how pregnancy works, how any of this works. And so you are exactly correct. When people don't have the information that they need in order to be successful, it makes it exceedingly hard to be successful. But these same politicians that want to prove that they're pro-life are not actually pro-life. They're just pro-controlling people.
I think if we were really pro-life, we would have a lot more systems in place to support families and single parents and have a better education system altogether to ensure that we're advancing properly. I love that you touched on like the sex ed, because I feel like that is such a frustrating, like we have politicians here who don't know how the reproductive system works and they're making laws on it. They don't have to scroll far to find a cat, a politician making themselves sound uneducated on the topic anyways.
And to kind of go back, Daniel, to what you were saying about, poor people being affected, people of color being affected, the disparities that exist in healthcare literacy are compounded even further when you don't have resources or access to systems of education outside of, what's provided to you by a government that doesn't care if you learn or if you don't learn. So disparities only get worse. The divide only gets larger.
Yeah. Well, it sounds depressing when you guys kind of talk about it.
It is.
It is very depressing.
It's a huge bummer.
But I want to try to lighten the mood, right? Because I think there is hope, right? I think there is hope. Because I was doing some research earlier in Florida, right? So Florida, even though they were able to pass that 15-week abortion ban within their legislature, and then the Florida Supreme Court was able to uphold that, they do have an amendment that's on the ballot, a ballot initiative this year, where the people of Florida get to vote on the amendment to put reproductive rights in the Constitution, right? The right to abortion. So that's very interesting. It happening in a southern state where we're usually pretty stronghold about those particular laws, to have an amendment on the ballot where the people can come out and vote for it. It gives a little hope, because you saw what happened in other states. I believe it was Ohio earlier or last year. The people came out and they decided upon what the Constitution should say within that state. So I think well, Georgia doesn't have a amendment this year, I would say, but I think go ahead.
Unfortunately, like in Georgia, you can't do a citizen-led referendum to vote on. So we have to get state legislature and everyone on board to have the right. We have to have 2/3 to agree on putting a referendum in to vote for. So
no power to the people is what you're saying.
No power to the people.
That's what you're saying, basically, right? No power to the people.
Well, I mean, they have power where they can vote for who they want to vote, so they can get.
Right. But I mean, but that's the problem, though, right? Like, and this is me being totally transparent. I really want people to get educated on the whys in Georgia, right? Georgia, the rural areas have always been more conservative. I mean, I've raised in a Baptist church, right? I'm from the deep South, right? So I understand the reluctance to some of these particular conversations and laws, right? But once again, me knowing that side of it and knowing that the makeup of each one of these states are people who are heavily based in faith, right? And faith it plays a huge role in a lot of things. I mean, the LGBTQ community, we had the Methodist Church split over there, right? We had hundreds of churches kind of split from that particular brand. So abortion is another one of those dividing topics, right? When it comes to the faith community. So down here in the South, in the rural areas, you usually have representatives that are in the House. And as you guys said, you pointed out, it's not that they really know the dangers of that abortion could present to a female, right? That can't, safely carry a pregnancy to term. But they're basing their perception on faith. And I think that's something from an education standpoint that these political officials, these elected officials, they should start to get educated on these things, because to me, and this is, my opinion, I think it's I think it's irresponsible. That's the word I'm going to use. It's irresponsible for you to make decisions on behalf of people and not know the full depth of the issue, right? So the elected officials, even though I know a lot of the decisions are based in faith, when it comes to the decisions that are made within legislation, I do think that we need to take a harder look at what it means from a health standpoint. And really weigh those options, because just banning something, I think that's going to bring out a lot of issues. We can find other ways to do business than ban things. So that's just my opinion on it. But I'll kind of let you guys weigh in on it.
Yeah, I think it's bad practice to be making laws based on your religious affiliation. If you're going to have a free country where we can all have our freedoms to do as we please without hindering the safety of others, there shouldn't be. I don't feel like it should play that much of a role. I do believe in separation of church and state. If you can't tell.
No. I know you do. That's I could definitely tell. But no, that's why I want to have these real conversations, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't think that the average person looks at politics and thinks that it impacts their daily lives until they walk into an office, like Dr. Maples' office, and say, "Hey, I want to get this procedure done." And Dr. Maples was like, "Nope, not by the law," right? So that's when we really see that. And it doesn't matter if it's the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, so on and so forth, right? People have to be knowledgeable of the things that are happening in legislation so that they don't run into these issues. So that's why I'm trying to have this conversation. But I want people to understand it holistically, that it's not just your local government that has control over these issues, right? Like for me, I used to think that you would have a minimal impact, but I think each level of government is just as important, right? Like you have local things that can be done. Like Dr. Maples, I think you were talking earlier about just these valiant people or groups and communities that come together to deliver services, right? When you don't have a government that's really trying to give that full backing, right? But you can get the people together to do it. Like talk to me a little bit about that. How do you see that for me?
So we in Georgia, me in Atlanta, I'm very lucky to be kind of in this bubble surrounded by people who feel similarly, if not the same, that I do about abortion access and bodily autonomy and the ability to make healthcare decisions with your healthcare provider and not your elected official. So I'm in a bubble, and I have to just disclose that. But I am from a rural area. I grew up very rural. I also grew up Southern Baptist. So I know that there aren't bubbles everywhere. So that being said, when you have groups of people come together, their voices do get heard. So you were touching on it earlier. When abortion is on the ballot in Ohio, in Kansas, in Michigan, it wins. People, the grand majority of people in this country want abortion to be accessible and legal, and safe. And when you ask people, they will vote for it. And so I'm hoping that that's what happens in Florida later this year. And I'm hoping here in Georgia we can continue to raise enough of a stink about it to make some stuff happen too. But there are advocacy groups all across the South that people can get involved with. There are lobby days at the Capitol where people can go and tell testimony, tell story, speak up for themselves. You can always email with your legislators, give them a call, tell them how you feel about certain things they're voting for or not voting for. And it's a part of that, being aware of what's going on at your community level, at your state level, and at your federal level. Those bills that are being proposed, those bills that are being voted on and heard by committees, the constituents, the voters have a say in what gets what the legislators hear about it. So they don't know unless we tell them. So if enough of us start telling legislators, how the real world is actually operating, it can only help.
Something you were talking about earlier before we started was like legal resources now to help. Every time you zoom in on me, it just like throws me off. I'm like, I'm not
Welcome to the studio. Welcome to the studio.
Yes. But how, like, unless you're in a very densely populated area that has the resources, that have a good legal section of their facility, that also can inhibit people's ability to get the proper care in time, or want to redirect you to a facility that can manage, making those decisions. If you want to elaborate on that, or
yeah, I can. So it is hard. We in Atlanta have been able to continue to provide abortion care within the legal limits because we do have a large network of people who have been providing abortion care for a long time, and a system within the hospitals where I work that the legal team has become experts about our ban and says these are the things we can defend. These are the exceptions that we feel fall into the ban. These are things that we do not feel are exceptions, those types of things. But for providers, physicians that are operating within systems or hospitals that don't have that kind of team, it can be really hard. And that's when we start seeing referrals from elsewhere and patients who are having to travel hours and hours across the state because even though their doctor knows how to take care of them, they aren't confident that if they were to get, audited, if they were to get sued, that their hospital system would be able to back them up, even though they aren't doing anything unsafe there. So Heather, I think you were also somebody touched on this earlier. I think it was Heather. The OBGYNs are leaving Georgia in rural areas because we have hospitals that are closing in rural areas also. So every time a hospital closes, the community that it serves loses that resource. And so the doctors in that area lose that resource. They have to relocate. The patients end up having to travel, and it puts huge strains on the systems in place there, because patients either aren't getting the care or aren't getting timely care, and it puts constraints on the systems where the patients end up, just volume wise.
Okay. Well, let me ask a question, because I really wanted to get this one in there. It's from a federal level, because I was reading earlier about the possibilities of a federal ban, right? Like the question's been asked, and you're talking about things from a local level about the accessibility issues that already exist in rural America. What does that look like if the federal ban is enacted, right? Like if it were to take place and someone were to sign that into law at the federal level, and they say, hey, we now ban abortion. So I'm guessing it would be some kind of ban that says a 6-week or what have you. What does that look like, though, from what's going to happen to people, you think, in your perspective across the nation? Is that something that we can handle from, because you just said it right there. You have a lot of hospitals that are closing, right? So those rural areas, the people, I doubt that you're going to have the support that you have in those urban areas where you still have that fight going on with a lot of resources. Like, what does that look like from a resources standpoint if there's a ban at the federal level?
I don't even know where to begin there, because I know that Heather said this earlier, like they wanted this to be a state's issue, right? So if they now make it a federal issue, then like, what are we even doing here? But that aside, I'm not sure what it would look like if we had a nationwide abortion ban. It would be awful. It would be super, super disappointing. It would be horrible for the patients that need abortion care. We are very fortunate to live in a time where abortion is safer than it ever has been. So even if federally it does become illegal, abortion pills are still safe and available. They're still accessible.
What I think would be very, very frustrating is like the saying that goes like restricting abortion access doesn't like lead to fewer abortions, just leads to fewer safe abortions. So I feel like, obviously there's a predictions by like the Harvard School of Public Health where they say like there could be an increase up to 21% in maternal mortality rate across the nation if a national ban went into effect. And that would be, 33% increase for Black women on top of that. So it's just, when people are desperate because they don't have what they need to have a safe abortion, they will go to extreme measures.
Okay. So, I mean, and we're kind of talking this out, but I always ask everybody that comes on the show, right? Like, especially when we're talking about issues that are this serious, I like to ask each participant in this discussion, what would you say if you had a moment with the president, right? If you had a moment with the president and you had to get them to understand how important this particular topic is to the president, right? What would you say to the president? What are you asking for in support of this issue and for the constituents that you represent that think this issue is important?
I personally think that like President Biden already thinks it's a really important issue. I think he's fully aware of it. Unfortunately, the way the way we're set up right now in our country, it's not like he can do much about it. Even when he does, when he speaks about it, he talks about, if you elect me again, we'll reinstate Roe v. Wade. And what he's really saying is not really elect him, but if you elect the people to support him, all the Senate and the House there to help push those bills forward.
So you're saying it does matter which party you pick if you want that particular outcome?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right. I put that in there for a reason, right? Because I know I mentioned the France that they amended in their constitution, right? That now going forward, France is going to be known as the first country ever in the world to really put it in their constitution where you can have those reproductive rights enshrined. So for us, America, I think we've been pretty progressive compared to other countries, and I think this is one issue where it's a very dividing issue, but I would like to hear on the people, right? Like we mentioned it, or Heather mentioned it earlier, where you said, hey, it has to be brought forth by the legislature, right? Not the people here, right? I'm interested in hearing from the people in every state, right? Because whether it's this issue or any other issue that I feel is very important, I think that the people of this country need to decide what is going to be the law of the land, right? Now, yeah, you can sit there and punt it and say, "Oh, I don't want to weigh in from a federal government standpoint," but then you really don't have a United States, do you? Right? Like you just have a bunch of little countries like other areas of the world, right? It's really not a United States. It's really a lot of different divided places because people can be prosecuted for just crossing over a border, right? So I think we do need to come to terms at the federal level. And that's why I always go back to trying to lean on the subject matter experts about what you're hearing, because a lot of these stories don't get out about the problems that we have at the local level. So I'm glad you came on, Dr. Maples, and I want to get your feedback though. Like, what would you ask for? What would be your thing if you could talk to the president and say, "Hey, this is my perspective, and I just want to tell you how I feel, and hopefully you can do this particular thing on behalf of the people." What is that thing?
Yeah. I wish this wasn't a dividing issue. I wish that it wasn't something that you had to pick a political side. Like, in my opinion, all political parties, both sides, however we're divvying up political parties at this point, like bodily autonomy and the ability to take care of yourself and your family should be something that, you know, all legislators, all aspects of the government care about. If I could talk to the current administration, like Heather said, I mean, they're saying all the right things. They're trying to do all the right things. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. But I would also say, like, it's important that we say what we mean. We say the word abortion when we're talking about abortion. We say that, you know, we need no interference in a patient physician or patient provider relationship, no interference from the government. We need no abortion bans, not just fewer abortion bans. And that while it's like catchy and fun to say, like, reinstate Roe was the bare minimum of what we needed as far as reproductive justice and reproductive health care in this country. Like, it was a fine place to start, but it still left out a lot of people who needed that health care who couldn't get it. The people of color, people below the poverty line, all those people still created huge barriers. So I mean, again, I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, but there is still miles to go as far as getting to where I would like to see things.
Yeah, no. That was amazing. I'm glad you brought that up. That Roe v. Wade was the bare minimum, because I've heard that a number of times, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to the people, if you could, or Heather, you can weigh in on this one too, because I see you acknowledging the fact that Roe v. Wade was the minimal. Like, well, what does that mean, right? Like, Roe v. Wade did certain things where when it was overturned, that was like the big push, right? We got to overturn Roe v. Wade, as if it was like this thing that was everything that Democrats wanted, right? Everything that these particular people wanted. So talk to me about Roe v. Wade, and you don't have to particularly tell me what it provided, but what didn't it provide, and then what would you want to see, right? In addition to what Roe v. Wade provided.
Well, you know, to my understanding, the what really held it together was the fact that decisions were made between a patient and a doctor. And I know there was also a piece about like the HIPAA, all the HIPAA laws, and making sure the protecting privacy, patient privacy. And I think that's where it landed. And then states made, you know, there were different state laws for abortion already. They just varied a bit. But yeah, I fully think that it should be a right in the U.S. And I feel like if you want to choose not to have an abortion because that's your decision, I support that. You know, like, I feel like this whole pro-life thing is not really pro-life. You know, it's kind of, I don't want to be pro-forced birth in a lot of ways, because pro-choice is not like, we're not out there saying have an abortion. We're just saying that it should be available to you if your situation requires it or is needed for your situation. And that's between you and your doctor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You want to weigh in, Dr. Maples?
I mean, yeah, agree. I agree. Retweet. But yeah, so I mean, Roe v. Wade in 1973 was important, but in 2024 and beyond, we have to be more inclusive. We have to not cut people out because they can't afford their health care. We have to make sure that we aren't creating more barriers for people who are already in situations that they couldn't imagine being in, right? Like, people don't wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, you know what sounds like a fun thing to do today is like, let's go get an abortion. Like, this is a decision that people make, and they shouldn't have to make a certain amount of money or live in a certain state or have, you know, a way, like a secret network of people where they can get pills from a different country just to be able to get the care that they need. And so whatever happens next, I hope it's more than Roe v. Wade was. I hope we're able to provide care for more people.
Also include the right to contraception, because I know that there's been a challenge on mifepristone as well, which is just.
I am so glad you just said that word, because I was just talking to my wife earlier, and I was like, if I had to say that word on this live, I'm gonna butcher it, and everybody's gonna be mad at me.
Every time I think about it too hard, I mess it up.
Look, so no, the one big thing that I want to capture in everything that you guys were just saying, though, is I feel as if at the federal level, there seems to be a opportunity for us to really get things right for the constituents. Dr. Maples, you really just weighed in on a lot regarding protections, right? Protections to constituents. And the part that stuck out to me was the year that you said, right? Like, this is everything that I am as a candidate right now. I am upset about old laws, right? Laws that were made way back when that we continue to fall back on, right? The Supreme Court, what was it, 1984 that I mentioned earlier? That was a 1984 law that, the Supreme Court in Arizona, in their infinite wisdom, was
18.
Was it 18? Oh, I gave it to 100 years ahead. Okay, so 1884. We have to do better. We have to do better as a country. Like, that is my big thing right there. It's like, I don't care if it's your local government. I don't care if it's your state government. I don't care if it's your country, right? The federal government. We got to do better than leaning on laws that were created by people that were generations past, right? Like, we have to, do things that are for the greater good for the people who are here existing and in the future generations. Like, that upsets me. I don't want to use any of those colorful words that I've used when I'm not on the screen, but no, it upsets me, right? Like, so I'm trying to get more people involved by kind of telling the facts. Like, you guys, you're laying out evidence. And I think that it takes more people, as Dr. Maple was saying, those people who come together and create these conversations where people get educated and people get to start to understand. Like, it takes individuals to kind of move this thing forward. And I just thank both of you for being here tonight, just kind of helping us break a lot of this down. What I want to do is I want to move into our final comments, because we are getting to that time frame. Heather, you are running as a candidate in Georgia, House District 131. All right, everybody needs to understand that is in Evans, Georgia. That is Columbia County, Georgia, and some parts of Grovetown, Georgia, right? So that's Columbia County, Georgia. What are your final words? Is there a website we can connect with you on? Is there a way we can get with you to try to help you in your fight to inform people on reproductive rights? Tell us about it.
Well, I'd love if you went to my website and reached out to me. There's a way to contact me directly. Tell me a little about how you feel about what's going on in Evans and Grovetown. And also there's information on your voting district. So there's links if you're not sure if you're in my district. And if you want to donate and help the cause, it's also appreciated. So it's hw4ga.com, which I think he'll put a link here, or maybe
we'll put a link up there. So it's going to be somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, thank you so much for having me, because I didn't realize how gun shy I was on camera until this. So this has been great situational awareness for me.
Yeah. No, it's And Heather, thank you for your service, right? Because I want to say
too.
that, yeah, you did over 20. Look, thank you for your support. Look, that's how I always respond. Uh, but no, thank you for your service, because for you to do 20 years in the military and for you to step out here, and of course you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're not a camera person, right? You're not a trained politician. For you to step out of your comfort zone and step up on behalf of the things that matter, I really appreciate that, truly. So, Dr. Maples, going to you. Hey, what do you want to tell the people? What do we need to know? Go ahead and give you your spotlight. Let us know.
What do I want to tell the people? I want to tell the people that they are impacted by abortion bans, whether they think they are or not. They are impacted because somebody in their life has had an abortion, even if they don't know it. Again, 1 in 4 people. And then if we allow bans on abortion to take place and to stand, we are telling the government that it is okay if they interfere with our basic health care. And so that has downstream effects that will continue to impact every aspect of our lives for eternity. So we can't let this stand. We can't just roll over and say, "Oh, I'm not getting pregnant. I'm not having an abortion. I don't think I would ever make that decision." Like it doesn't matter if you would ever make that decision. What matters is that the government should not be interfering in your ability to make decisions about your body. And so making that known to the people that you have elected, holding them to their promises if they've said that they're gonna, stand up for this, stand up for reproductive health, stand up for reproductive justice, keeping them accountable. Like you are their boss, you get them elected or you don't. And so if they're not they're not making true on their promises, make sure they know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for that, because I always need subject matter experts on this show to really break it down, because once again, legislators, we get in front of cameras and we're supposed to talk facts, but if we don't have the subject matter experts that are actually giving us the information, the real deal, it's not going to work out too well for us. So I thank you for everything that you provided tonight. And to everybody, I think this year is going to be huge. Abortion is on the ballot. We see that across every state, but it's on the ballot this year at the federal level. So May 21st, we need everybody to come out and vote. You already know the big issues. We're trying to bring it to you in every fashion, but May 21st is the first time to vote, and November 9th, that's the really big vote. You get to decide the way the country is going to go moving forward. So please tap in. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and hope to see you soon. All right. Have a good night.